archive button. So are you good with like an hour? We'll see
Yeah.
how it goes, because it's a big topic. It's a lot of information, and I have some visuals to share. So, like I said, I usually, my videos last like an hour. So if you have
Okay.
that time slot, that would be good. So,
Yes.
all right. So I've been looking forward to this topic and chatting with you, because I chat with you. I mean, I don't chat with you on Substack. I'll just see some of your posts. So I'm just really excited to find out more about you. I looked at some of your YouTube videos. So why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about what you do and who you are, of course.
Okay. So I go by Epic Mercury. That's kind of my nickname. Of course, my first name is James. I do that mainly in today's day and age to protect my privacy. So that's kind of what I prefer to do. I am a natural psychic from as long as I can remember. Anyway, I think the time that I became aware that I was very different from other kids and I was seeing and hearing things that they were not was about 7. Um, so now I don't know what it's like for most people who wind up being psychic children, but for me it was nightmarish. There's no other way to put it. I was constantly seeing and sensing things that other people were not. And after a while, I simply went, okay, I have to pretend that I'm not seeing any of this,
Um,
that I'm not sensing any of this. Social interactions became very awkward, especially when you're already a teenager. Your hormones are already going crazy, and somebody lies to you, and you can see their aura shrink close to their body and dip darker in color. And you might not know exactly what the truth is, but beyond a shadow of a doubt, they're lying.
right.
I mean, you're already an awkward teenager who doesn't know how to handle social interactions. What do you do with that information? Do you be ridiculous and do you accuse them of lying to try to get to the truth and to try to understand them better? Or, it
And
just,
get beat up by doing that.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 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 I mean, lots of awkward, weird situations. So, I think, when I got into, since I knew there was something different, I was trying to train the ability to some degree to kind of get it under control. Because for me, again, I had this extra channel of information constantly coming in, and yourself as a medium as well. I'd be sitting in a room, and all of a sudden, spirit walks in, and I might not see them. When I was younger, of course, it was much more vivid. What I would see, it was almost, thank God, not quite as wild as like The Sixth Sense. It was very vivid
Mm.
and very scary. Luckily, uh, now I have my own idea about what happened. I think that as our pituitary and pineal glands shrink just a little bit and become a little bit less active as we move into adulthood, that sensory data becomes a little bit less overwhelming. So,
Mm.
we kind of move out of the invisible world as children. We still got one foot in there into adulthood where we're more focused on what's going on here in the physical world, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination. Um, again, I did not like seeing the vivid stuff, but now, of course, and I don't know what it's like for you, I will see or sense like a shape. I may get a shape, but I don't get vivid visuals unless I get a quick flash of what somebody looked like in life, and that's it, and then I'll get
Mm.
a sensory data.
So you see things subjectively and objectively, or just one or
Well,
the
what,
other?
well, when let's, if you don't mind me saying, let's define terms when you say, because for me, it's
Oh, okay,
subjective.
sure.
For
Yeah.
me, it's subjectively, right? Like I'll see a spirit walk into the room and I have to decide, especially if I'm in a social situation, am I going to pay attention or am I going to ignore it? Um, as objectively, I'm sure there's something objectively there. I don't have any idea I don't think we have the technology necessarily to capture that. So I'm not quite sure what you mean.
Yeah. Well, let me just back up a little bit, and I'll clarify that in a second. Um, I am kind of the opposite of what you had just experienced as a kid, totally normal, I guess, until I hit 10 years old, and I had a really bad case of measles, rubella, one of the two, and I almost died. I
Hmm.
was very sick. I had a very high fever, well over 100 for a long time.
Right.
And it was after that all the spooky stuff. I never had invisible friends. I never saw, spirit people as a kid. I was just, it feels like I didn't come alive until I was 10. I mean, I do remember like a little snippet when I was 2 years old. My dad took a picture of me with my dolls, and oddly, I remember that moment when I was 2. But after that, I mean, it was just, kind of fuzzy. Only in comparison because after 10 years old, my life became so intense that prior to 10 years old was just meh, you know?
Right.
But so I never had invisible friends. But after I had this, welcome everybody who joined, by the way. And again, this is going to be a
Hi, everyone.
James is waving. This is going to be a very involved topic. We're going to bounce from spiritualism to remote viewing, back and forth, which I have a tendency to do. So,
Which, of course, they're related. I mean, they're related.
Hold on, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So what I found out is that, and I know this because I went to a shrink doctor, whatever you want to call it, because my visions were getting so intense as a young, as a teenager or young adult, and I had nobody to talk to about this. Right. And being a clairvoyant, it was 99% all visuals. So I went to this one. I just call him a shrink, just to put him in a disrespectful topic, but that's just my wordage. And he said something very interesting. He said, "Okay, let me ask you this. When you were a young child, did you ever have a fever?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. I mean, what kid does not have a fever?" He goes, "No, a really high fever,
right,
for an extended amount of time." I'm like, "Well, yeah. When I was 10, I had the measles, and I know I hit 102, 103. Because I know my parents I should have been in the hospital, but they were dousing me with alcohol in my bed." And I had hallucinations and crazy stuff. I was out of school for like 2 months. You were
delirious, right?
Oh, yes. So anyway, what he had said kind of put my life at ease. He says, okay, because, well, that his specialty was studying people in this category. I'm not quite sure what his pinpoint was, but he did say that through his studies, he noted that people, young children who had, how'd you do that? How'd you put your hand on the comments?
Oh, I just waved in there. But through the phone.
Oh, so, I see. I was
yeah.
thinking, how'd you do that sorcery?
I guess because I'm on the phone. So
I see that. Yes. Okay, that's fun. So anyway, he said that his studies is that he noted that children in particular who had very high fevers, it activated a certain part of their brain.
Right.
This is your artists, your clairvoyants, your mediums, your psychics, your musicians, your dancers, your creative people.
Trauma, yeah. Lots of different types of trauma, I think, activate different parts of the brain.
Yeah, trauma too. And also, I mean, again, it's not my case, but people who've had severe trauma, physically, emotionally, through childbirth or accidents or whatnot, also stimulates them to be me. So like remote viewing, there's so many sectors of remote viewing. Mediumship, spirituality, all the spooky stuff. There's just so many tiers of it. And it's somehow it all relates, but to touch on each, there's like really no concrete, yes, this is the way it is, because it just branches out, feathers out into so many topics and so many categories. That's why I like talking to people like yourself to hear, and all the other people that I had lunch with, to hear, what your experiences are and see what the common thread is.
Right. So I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit, only in the sense that I think that remote viewing is a specific set of protocols that are done in a structured way. Now, there's different methods as far as that documentation with a pen and paper. That is how most of it's done with most people. This is the part that was developed by Ingo Swann. So that's, in my view, that's remote viewing. The content of the remote viewing can get very, very interesting because you could look at abstract things. You could look at spirits. You could look where your deceased loved one is on the other side. Is that mediumship or is that remote viewing? You're using that remote viewing tool, that set of protocols, but you can still look at the other side. You can look at enigma targets. You can look at, people have claimed to have been able to queue up, their own past lives, for instance, using remote viewing. Is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
remembering? Is that, so it
Right.
does get it's a little bit abstract, but I would say
Mhm.
that there's, I guess my view is the spirit world, the invisible world is vast. There's clearly a database of some kind. I'm going to use computer terms. There's clearly a database. Some people call it the Akashic Records. Some people call it the Matrix when the remote viewers first developed it. Um, there's some place where we're going to get the information that's not quite physical. It's not quite here unless it's embedded somehow in this environment as well. So I would say that there's a specific protocol. I would use different terms. For instance, if somebody's using clairvoyance, when I'm sitting and I suddenly get and I'm meditating and I get a flash of intuition, I know something, or I get a precognitive flash about something that's coming, let's say a week in advance.
Mhm.
Um, let's say for myself, I've had a few medical issues recently. So I get a flash of myself being in the hospital in a week. That gives me a precognitive warning. Hey, you need to kind of prepare, like something's going to go wrong. You need to pay attention to what's going on with your health. That's clairvoyance, in my view. That's precognition or clairvoyance, as
Right.
opposed to sitting down with a pen and paper, specifically looking at a target, preferably in the blind, where I don't know what it is, so my conscious awareness can't get in the way. That's remote viewing to me.
Mhm.
But
Yes.
again, I don't think it's necessary because we are dealing with a very abstract approach, right? Like, where are we going to get the information? There's 8 random target reference numbers. How does your unconscious know where to go to? I mean, it's abstract, no doubt. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm being like dogmatic about it, but that's
No.
how I would define that.
Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't
Sorry.
mean to
No,
interrupt.
no, no, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
just want to back up a little bit because I was supposed to define my term of subjective and objective, which I didn't get to do.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Um, Subjective is to me is when I experience things with emotions, senses,
Okay.
subjectively, and objectively is when I experience these same or similar things with my physical. For example, seeing spirit people. Sometimes it's subjectively where it's through just my clairvoyant mind.
Hmm.
And objectively, sometimes they're actually right in front of me. So that is my terms of how I
So
use them.
for so you're saying for you, it's vivid visual. You still get the vivid visuals with somebody sitting there,
Yes,
like
sometimes.
right in front of you. Okay.
Right. Yes. Sometimes it's subjectively where it's through my senses, all of them, not just one. Although I'm heavily clairvoyant, the senses never work one by themselves. They work.
Right.
You'll
They
have a
overlap.
dominant one, but
Right.
they all work together. So I would say like, and it's kind of changing. 80% is through subjective, like through my senses, and which is becoming stronger, which I'm super happy about. Is where I can actually see these things. Which is it's cool, but yet I have to be ready and be able to process that because these things just pop up.
Right. Now,
Okay.
rarely do I get anything that strong visually. Especially, I sense and hear way more than I visually pick up.
Yes. Mhm.
So, and to be honest with you, I prefer it that way because
Yes.
seeing something vividly like that would be quite shocking, and it's
I,
already
I
overwhelming
will tell
enough.
you,
So,
it most definitely is. We have one comment. Hold on. Oliviero, I hope I pronounced that right, from Italy. Hi, I can't introduce remote. Hi, I can't introduce remote viewing, but it happened naturally a few times. I found myself seeing the inside of unfamiliar houses, and I could even see and hear sounds of cars passing on the streets. The experience was very realistic, as if I was physically there.
right
That's very
now,
cool.
right now, see, I would say that we could call that spontaneous remote viewing, right? I would call it clairvoyance, and again, I don't
Hmm.
mean to split terms. I do like to try to be precise with my language, but I
Yeah.
also realize we're dealing with an abstract concept. So I would
Yep.
call that spontaneous clairvoyance myself, and it can
Hmm.
you can absolutely get vivid information. It's clear. One thing's clear. You and I both know consciousness is mobile. It's
Hmm.
not it's not stuck in our body. Clearly, part of us can be projected somewhere else. Like with the remote viewing program that the military used, they were first exploring and experimenting with astral projection. And the idea with remote viewing is 50%. So half of your consciousness is projected to the target site, supposedly. Some viewers say you're projected to the database instead. You're not actually going to the physical site, you're going to a database. Either way, it's splitting hairs. in my view. Somehow you're getting that data. 50% of your consciousness ideally is supposed to be there getting the data, and 50% supposed to stay in your body, objectifying the data in real time. And the main advantage of this is, and I hope I'm not going too far off on a tangent on this, is I don't know if you've ever experienced being in a deep meditative state or spontaneously experiencing astral projection, but sometimes you can go to these places
A lot.
and you can vividly experience these places, or you can get these profound spiritual answers that are just completely overwhelming. Your mind suddenly opens up, you understand this transcendental truth, and then you come back down to normal awareness out of that meditative state, and you lose something in translation. There's a vital piece of the information that you can't remember, or when you astral project someplace, you come back and you can't quite remember some of the details that you were there to acquire, to try to figure out. And you're like, I can't, that's
So
fuzzy.
frustrating.
Right. And so remote viewing is a technique, is 20th century technique to try to get around that, where 50% of your consciousness remains in your body, documenting the data with a pen and paper in real time, so that you're not losing as much when you try to come back to regular awareness. That was the goal. So
Yeah.
again, it was developed as an intelligence tool, right, to spy on the Soviet.
Psychic spies with the
Yeah.
government. Yeah.
Right, because the Soviets had their own, they're much more open. Their culture is much more open to psychic stuff, and they were using psychic spies a long time ago. The Americans only
and they
used it
were
when
using it specifically to get, secret stuff or to spy on. I mean,
espionage
exactly
data.
what
What?
it sounds like, yeah. But in
What's
our
yeah?
realm,
What's in that building? Right.
what's in that building? What's in that box? And what is this weapon? We think there's a weapon in here. Go in there and tell me what you see.
Yep.
So cool. But in our neck of the woods, more on the spiritual side, I did experience, of course, I took classes and whatnot, with Paul Smith himself, on controlled remote viewing, AKA all that military stuff, just so I can learn what that is and how it works and what it feels like. And it was scary because it's so flipping accurate. I mean, it's like mediumship. There's a percentage of time when you're nailed, with the spirit person, and then the other times when you're just not. That's just the way it is. But I just wanted to. I think
Now, personally, again, I think that probably is the case, even though you could ask some really wild, what we would consider to be spiritual or abstract questions with remote viewing. Again, the reason I'm going to say that remote viewing is as reliable as it is because it's helping you learn to put your brain into that bilocated state where 50% of your consciousness is there and 50% of your consciousness is in your body. And so you're documenting it in real time. And I think that's why there's the accuracy. That's why I enjoy it.
And I love that you said bilocated, bilocation, astral projection. It's they all intertwine. And I don't know what word to use when I describe these experiences. I will say this. I mean, I just do this my entire life. I just thought, growing up, as a 10-year-old on, I've had these experiences and I just thought it was the way everybody was and everybody can do this stuff. You
didn't have anybody jumping on you and criticizing you, huh? Because man, I got a lot of it.
Oh no. See, but I am the type of person where, I'm born and raised in New York, not the city, the island, but still, I just, I don't know. I was just the type of person where, I don't know. I really don't know what my point was, but I had my experiences and I just wouldn't allow somebody to bully me based on experiences. Because I'm like, how do you know what my experience is? And a lot of times when people bully, it's because they don't understand. They don't have the knowledge. So there's a conflict there. But going back to remote viewing, and again, it's a big old fluffy term when we're not talking about controlled remote viewing with the military in that aspect, of course. And it just came naturally to me. I'm going to give just 2 examples, and I spoke about them several times on Substack. I think I wrote about them as well. There was a few years back when my daughter was in college. Where I lived it was a 4-hour difference in driving, and she tells me, she sends me a text, and I was out and about, celebrating my husband's birthday. She says, Mom, there's a ghost in my room. Get rid of it. I'm like, what? I'm like, on one hand, I'm flattered that she says, oh, that she feels that her mom is so spooky that I could ghost bust like that. But I'm like, okay, you do know I am 4 hours away from where you are. She's like, yeah, well, just take care of it. Because she knows me. And I'm like, okay. So meanwhile, I'm in a hotel. My husband's taking a shower. We're about to go to the city, celebrate his birthday. So I knew he's in the loo. I have 20 minutes to do whatever it is I needed to do. So I sat down on the bed and I just closed my eyes. I'm like, okay. And I was angry. And here, this is a little, wait, hold on a second. Oliveros says the military uses it. I even have their protocol they use, but I've never bothered to put it into practice. Well, you certainly should practice with that.
Might want to consider it. Yep.
Yes. Okay. So, and then I am very scientific. So I look for patterns. So this first, issue where my daughter wanted me to ghost bust. I'm like, okay. So I sat down in bed, knew I had at least 20 minutes to do something. I'm like, well, what am I going to do? And it just like another person took over. I just sat down on the bed and closed my eyes. Next thing I knew, I was in her dormitory, 4 hours away. My physical body is sitting on the bed, but yet a spiritual body or another form of myself was in her dorm.
Your psychic, I would say your psychic body myself, but that'd be my term for it. Right.
That would be, so I am in her dorm. Now here's another little thing that all you astral projectors, will want to take note of. And I know Joanna Porta is one, so I'm glad she's here. She sent a link. We'll have to look at that.
Yeah, I've enjoyed her stuff on Substack. So
yeah,
quite interesting.
Very exciting. I want her next on my live. So anyway, so I am in this dorm, and my back is up against the door. So it's, and I know this. I want to say now for a fact because it's happened to me about 3 times already. And the doorways are like a portal. It could be different for you guys, but just for me. So I am in her dorm with my back up against this door, and I'm looking around. I'm like, holy cow, I am in my daughter's dormitory room. I'm looking around and I see every single thing she had in her room. I'm like, oh, there's the figurine and there's the lights and everything.
Sure.
And look at all the clothes on the floor. What a pig. And so I just got it, I got into mom mode, and I'm like, it's beautiful and decorated really nice, but yet it's sloppy. I'm like, okay, let me just concentrate on what I'm doing here. So I kind of refocused, and I'm like, okay, I'm here to take care of a ghost that shouldn't be here. So I'm looking around the room, and I look above the closet, and I see this gray cloud. So I'm looking at it, and it was a gray cloud. It wasn't a person, so I had it pop into another sense. I'm like, okay, clairvoyance is kind of working because I can see a cloud, but I have to come up, activate the other senses to find out what this is. Is it glaucoma or is it an actual ghost,
Right.
So then all the senses kicked in. I'm like, it's a guy. He's a troublemaker. He's a pervert. He's harassing everybody in the dorms in the college. And obviously he's dead. So I'm looking at him, and again, here's another key. So we have doorways as a thing to take note of these projections. Secondly, well, first I want to say it's emotions, because it was the emotion of anger that activated this projection for me. So once
right,
the emotions,
and your maternal instincts, right? Yeah.
Once those emotions are so strong, and then this is how these things, in my case, progress. So it's emotions, the doorways, and then the senses just kick in and do whatever you have to do for wherever you are. So I'm looking at this cloud, and again, anger came up. I'm like, you know what are you doing? I'm having a telepathic conversation. I'm like, what are you doing? You're in a dormitory, girls' dormitory. You're a dude. That's a little perverted, and this is not going to happen. I go, so you're going to get your cloudy butt out of here. And not only out of this room, but out of this entire campus. I said, but before you go, I said, I'm going to wrap you up in the most beautiful pink hue ever, because he's a dude, so he probably was not comfortable in pink. I go, and then I'm going to send you to Source, and Source will direct you to where you need to be. But I said, if I have to come back and do this again, I'm kicking your butt. And this is not the first time I threatened a ghost. Who does that? I mean, and thank God I didn't have to, step into that, kick ass mode. But it was just the feeling of this, and it goes back to, I don't know if you read it. I wrote a contract for the spirit world, rules and regulations, and that they abide by it. So I'm like, if I have to come back and deal with you again, it's not going to be pretty. I had no idea what I was going to do, but it's just that intent of to the spirit world. You can.
Oops.
So my back was still up against the wall, and I was back into my hotel room, and it was only 5 minutes that happened. So the next day, I texted my daughter. I'm like, "So how does your room feel?" She's like, "Fine." I go, "If you had to guess where this ghost was, where would you say it would be?" And being my daughter, she, similar to me, she's like, "Well, it would be up by the closet area." I'm like, exactly where it was.
Yeah. Yeah. My kids were, yeah, they were used to me asking weird questions like this. They grew up with all this. So if you don't mind, especially because, as a mother, you're talking about this, if I could share an experience as a remote viewer
Absolutely.
pertaining to one of my children. So it's not that I didn't astral project. I can assure you my daughter during her teenage years, especially she was my oldest child, did not appreciate the fact that I could come flying across town at a moment's notice and go, "What are you up to?" I mean, like I knew something was up or I saw what was going on. But the one that the story that I experienced that really blew me away as a remote viewer is my first year as a remote viewer, really learning the protocol. And again, I was blown away by the reliability, right? The fact that almost every single time, with very few exceptions, every once in a while you blow chunks and you don't get any information that pertains to the target. And it seems to be part of the learning curve as well. But I mean, vast majority of the time, 90%, 95% of the time, you're getting accurate data about that particular target, whatever it's a person, place, thing, event, anywhere in time and space, past, present, or future, at least as far as you can verify, right? So, I mean, some of it's really abstract. But so I'm sitting here one day and I go, I'm going to experiment with this temporal cue, and I'm just going to look at my optimal trajectory, just me, James. I'm going to look at my optimal trajectory for the next 7 days and just see what pops up, just so I can be aware of any opportunities or And when you do that, of course, it's kind of like asking an open-ended question. Now, people tend to think when you're looking at an optimal trajectory that you're going to see something wonderful, right? Because you're looking at optimal. But the optimal, because this is also a survival mechanism for us human beings, could be warning you about something terrible, that the tire that's loose on your car, something medical that's going to happen or something like that. So I'm sitting here and I'm remote viewing the next 7 days. And so I know in other words, I'm consciously aware. I know exactly, I'm looking at my optimal trajectory, my future for the next 7 days. And the end product, what we call the end product, the site template, is a sketch of me in the pediatrician's office with my youngest son. And he was about a year old, and he has this massive ear infection, and he's getting treated for the ear infection. And I even perceived that it was a Tuesday, and I was doing this session on a Sunday. So I'm like, okay, this is weird.
Precise.
So I look over at my son, and he's he's my only child who did this. I have three. I look at I know I trust remote viewing with my life at that point. I've seen how reliable it is, and so I go to my son Nicholas and I look at him and I'm looking at his ears. His ears aren't red. He doesn't have a fever that I can perceive. He's not crying. There's nothing wrong with him, and I'm like, okay, but I know how reliable remote. I'm like, I bet my life on it. I know this information is accurate. So this is back before cell phones were predominant, and I had to use speed dial from my home. But Monday morning, when the pediatrician's office opened, I got on speed dial and I just sat there and I went, I'm going to change the outcome of this, and I'm going to get my son in to see the pediatrician on Monday. And I'm speed dialing and speed dialing and speed dialing. Half an hour later, I get in, and of course, the first appointment they have is on a Tuesday, and I'm like, so I couldn't change the outcome.
Wow.
I was trying. So we go. My son and I go there, and there was this Hispanic doctor named Dr. Novi, and she was a sweetheart, but I think she thought, as a father, maybe I was a little bit too much of a helicopter dad, that I was a little too concerned with my kids. And I'm like, look, I don't care what you think. I'm going to follow my instincts with my kids. Um, so I come in with my son, Nicholas, and she walks into the office after we get it, or into the patient examination room after we get in there. My son's sitting there, calm as can be, relaxed. It's a cold season. There's a virus going around. She's exhausted. The doctor, she comes in and she looks at my son. She looks at me. She looks at my son and goes, and she's clearly frustrated, about the fact she's totally overwhelmed. And she's like, your kid is completely caught. So she says, what are we here for today, Mr. I'm not going to say my last name. Right. She says, what are we here for today? And I said, well, I didn't want to get into the whole, I'm a remote viewer, I'm a psychic. I get tired of arguing with people about whether it works or not. I'm just like, I said, I don't know. I have a feeling my son has an ear infection. And she gets completely frustrated. She's like, well, you're here, so let's look. So she walks over and she puts a little instrument, I don't know what it's called, little thing with a light in his ear.
Yeah.
And she jumps back. She doesn't look at me yet. She jumps back and she walks around the other side and she puts the device in his other ear and she looks around and she sits there and she turns. This surprised me. She turned to me. Her mouth was open. Her hands dropped to her side and she said, how did you know? And I said, I don't know. I just had a feeling. and she said he has a massive ear infection in his left ear and a really good one going in his right. If you did not bring him in, there would be a really good chance he would lose either part or all of his hearing. So that experience taught me a couple things. Not only that you can reliably look into the future, of course, but that especially me being a father, my children's optimal trajectory was connected to me as a dad. So I have a certain responsibility. So until my kids developed to a certain age, probably 16 or 17, when I would look at my own optimal trajectory, they would frequently pop up.
Well, yeah.
So rather than me just focusing on them, but that's in my view, that's one of the experiences that really solidified to me the value of, and I could get a warning like that about something that would happen through meditation, but I just enjoy the remote viewing process. And that's one of the most valuable that I've ever had personally as a father. So,
well, I'd like to share one thing that also has to do with the same child I was talking about before. But I do want to mention Ingo Swann, who is the father, the founder of remote viewing psychologist, parapsychologist, sorry. And this is one of his books. Do I have? Yeah,
all of his books are very good. They're a little bit dense, but yeah, they're all very good.
I mean, this one, Natural ESP, is kind of cool. Then he has this other one, Penetration Special Edition, talks about ETs and telepathy. Like I said, I am scientific. A lot of this has no validation. Apparently, he went up to Mars, looked around. I was like,
the moon.
Same thing with mediumship.
The moon and Mars.
Your grandmother, her favorite color was red, and she always wore a ring on her right hand pinky. But if she's dead, how do you validate that? I mean, how do you validate some things?
Right.
Unless a person knows that for sure, that could validate that. But when you're talking about, I saw this on the moon. I saw this ET, and I have experiences with ETs as well. But a lot of this stuff in here, is it imagination? Is it remote viewing? Is it projection? What is it? I'm like, cool story, but let's get scientific with that one.
And now this is my view, of course. A lot of people who don't understand psychic senses or how they work would say that everything that we do is complete nonsense. They'd say it's all imagination.
No, I'm disagreeing.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, you and I know it's not, but there's a large portion of the population who would go, look, you're doing something that's abstract that I can't see and I can't verify in any other way. Yes. And when you get something right, it's a lucky guess, right? Like that's how they, it's a coincidence.
Yes.
I've been a remote viewer for 20 years, and I did look out of curiosity, just want to go look at a lot of the stuff that Ingo mentions in Penetration, for instance. And I personally feel like he was spot on. So, and I was looking at it in the blind. So
I need to read this whole book because I didn't.
The content of the book is unnerving. Let me put it that way. So sometimes we're, when you're dealing with remote viewing, we're dealing with a process or technique of conscious perception. And then people are reacting to the content of what you're perceiving.
Yes.
And those are two separate things. at least in my mind. A lot of folks who go, no, they're the same thing. But are you disturbed by the process that human beings are capable of perceiving these things, or are you disturbed by the content of what was perceived? Or do you find either one of those useful? So that's anyway.
Or are you
That's
responding to the fact that you can't, process it because it has never happened to you, or you haven't read about it, or you don't know anybody else who has that. So it's like, okay, I don't know how to process that because I have no experience in that field. I do want to
see,
go ahead.
Can I make one point real quick?
Yes.
And the one way I always enjoyed getting around that is to simply sit down with somebody, and especially the real skeptics, the hardcore, usually men, right? Because men tend to be more analytical and less, this is all woo woo. Sit down with them and go, okay, well, all this is just, I'm completely full of it, right? I don't know what I'm talking about. Let me take you through some of the remote viewing protocols. Let's do 2 or 3 blind targets together. I'll teach you the process. You sit down with a pen and paper. I'm not involved. We'll see. And I've lost a few friendships that way because the guys
Yep.
Yeah, they're so freaked out. They were, we get to the first target, they go, "That's spooky. I drew that. That's weird." And I go, "Yeah, but it's all nonsense. Come on, just keep going.
Right.
Let's
I'm
try."
just making it up. Yeah.
I'm full of it because I'm trying to get them to not resist at that point, because they're already freaked out, right? So I'm like, okay, because guys, you got to get around that I'm not going to believe it no matter what. Go to the second target, teach them some additional stages. They get even more detailed information about the second target. It's totally different from the first one, and they're like, "That's weird," and I'm like, "Yeah, but it's nonsense. Come on, let's keep going."
Yeah, I love that.
And then usually by the third target, I mean, one guy had he nailed it. He nailed every target. He followed my instructions perfectly. He got up. He was completely freaked out. He said, "I don't want anything to do with this. I'm done." And he never spoke to me again. So
I understand that totally. Yes. I do want to say this about Ingo Swann. He is known to bilocate. Again, is it projection? Is it bilocation? But he did the double split, where he's in one spot, then he can go. Now, again, like I said, I'm very scientific, and I do not believe anything unless I experience. You can tell me an amazing story, but unless somewhere along my lifeline, unless I experience something similar, I'll just chalk it up to, wow, that's a really cool story, and I'm happy for you. But especially when it comes to this woo-woo stuff, I have to be able to experience this myself in order to say I understand that experience. Now,
I have a very specific point after you're done with this. Go ahead.
Well, make a note of it. I want to hear that. And I also want to hear your protocol on remote viewing, on how you, excuse me, for the people who are not familiar with that protocol. I want to talk about that as well.
Okay.
But Ingo Swann, how he projects himself out. Again, is it astral projection? Is it bilocating? I had another probably, oh gosh, I mean, I hesitate to say this, the most intense experience or unusual, because I've had so many. So, but it's up there. Again, going back to, my daughter who I was talking about earlier, she sends me a text and she's like, "I am so sick. I am throwing up. I have a fever." At that point, she's in an apartment. Her roommate was not there. She was gone for the weekend. She's by herself. She goes, "I can't move. Can you help me?" I'm like,
wow.
And I'm like, I am 4 hours away. I mean, I would go there and drive, of course, but something had to be done immediately. And I said, I'll come over. She's like, no. She goes, "That's okay, but I just want to tell you I'm not feeling well." So here again, emotions.
Sure.
Extremely strong. And this can work in a good way and in a bad way, when you have these emotions. So this is why I'm saying, all you woo-woo people, do no harm. Just gotta say that, because it happens, depending on where your direction is. When these emotions are so strong, make sure you do it for good. And that's all I have to say about that. But anyway, so I'm like, oh my God, I go, she's very sick. So here I go. I pulled back again. I sat down, and immediately I saw her in her bathroom being sick. I'm like, oh God, and then I took a pause. And then next thing I know, I am in her bedroom again with my back up against the door. So here we go, another pattern. Doing a bit of traveling with the door, with my back up against the door. So that's a portal. Again, at least for me. And so I'm like, wow, I just went from the bathroom. I am now in her bedroom. I could see everything and I see her in her bed, but I felt like I needed to do something else for her. So triple split. This is the first time this happened to me. So part of my body was to the bathroom. Another part of my body was up against the door. Then my etheric body went one step further, and I know this because I saw this huge light pop out of my chest. I'm like, whoa! I'm like, what is that? And so here I'm up against the door, and this light body goes over to her where she's lying down in bed, and it was myself, went parallel to her body, and it was such pure energy. And I don't know the right adjectives or words for it, but it was very bright yet not blinding. But it was parallel to her, and I was able to see where her sickness was. So I went up to her head because she did mention she had headaches, so that would be the obvious place to start. No woo-woo there. But so I focused on her head, and I'm like, oh my God, there's an infection. There's an infection in here. So I just took my light hands, they weren't physical hands, and I was just pulling it out, and I would see these green yellow goops like coming out of her, and I would just pull it until I felt it was gone, and then I would just continue to hover over her body and project some of my light being over hers to heal her. I'm like, who does this? But at that moment in time, that's what needed to be done. Then all of a sudden everything went in reverse and I was back at home. So I'm sitting in my bed. I'm like, what the shit was that? What was that? And I can't tell anybody because I will be locked up. And I share it. This happened years ago, but I have shared it. So then again, the next day I said to her, I text her, how are you feeling? She's like, good. She goes, I'm a little tired. I go, how's your headache? She goes, it's gone. I go, are you nauseous? She goes, no. She goes, I feel really well. She goes, I'm just tired. I'm like, okay, well, stay, hydrate and rest. So I don't know what that was, but it was literally a triple split.
It's a very, my other big influence, not to go off on a tangent here, but is the Rosicrucians, traditional mystical organization that goes back, depending on who you believe. Now, I believe it goes all the way back to ancient Egypt and before that. But anyway, this is a light worker technique. It's very common in lots of traditional orders as far as astral projecting to somebody and doing healing work, whatever your intuition guides you to do to help that person overcome that illness. So that's very, very common. But if you don't mind, can I step back real quick to when you're saying your experience as a psychic medium? Now, I found this quite interesting again, because I really enjoy the technical and precise part of remote viewing as far as exercising or utilizing psychic perception. So one of the things that's very interesting with remote viewing is you can look into other people's experiences. So let's say somebody tells you, hey, I saw an angel. I saw this. I experienced a vision here. If you know how to cue that up and ask that question the right way and go look at it in the blind, you can actually go look at what was that person experiencing. Were they actually experiencing a transcendental event? Was there something really going on? Was it last night's pizza percolating in their stomach? Was it their creative imagination? And you can actually look at that. You can step into somebody's dreams and you can actually analyze your own dreams or somebody else's dreams. Those are usually best to do in the blind where you don't know what you're looking at, so your conscious mind can't get in the way. But one of my most interesting experiences was stepping into one of Nostradamus's quatrains, for instance. I queued it up. In particular, I took the entire thing written in French as opposed to translated to English, and I looked at that. I used that as target reference material, and I looked into that, and sure enough, it was a real vision. I mean, it was a very profound, vivid vision. He had a very, I don't know how far you want to go on this, but he had a very specific, very traditional technique, even in the Rosicrucians or a lot of others, for looking into the future that he used back then. But what I found fascinating was that it was a genuine precognitive event that he was looking at. And there's a weird sense of, I always find this interesting whenever I'm stepping into somebody else's psychic experience. If I want to go look at it, because sometimes I don't have the time, but if I want to go look at it, or I'm looking at a dream or a memory, there's always this jolt of weird disorientation right when I go to look at it. So I know I'm looking at something. It always
Really?
cues me up. I know I'm looking at something abstract. I'm not stepping into this is somebody's subjective experience as opposed to like I'm looking at a historical event, for instance, or something like that. So yeah, but so you can look. You can actually go look at
Yeah,
those
that's
events. And
fascinating. That's one thing I have to put on my
somebody
list. Popping into
somebody
somebody's.
somebody says I have a spirit guide. You can go look at the spirit guide and see what is the spirit guide really there? Is this their imagination? Maybe maybe it's genuine coupled with intuition. Is it some other type of entity that they're not really aware of? I mean, you can actually go look at all this, and you can do it as a group. Like when I teach people, I have large groups of people, and I cue them up in the blind. Sometimes what we call front loaded, where you know what you're looking at, and everybody goes and looks at the same thing, and then they
Yeah,
compare all their data. So
that's cool. That's cool. Years ago, I think like 2020, I think it was, when I was taking courses, with Paul Smith,
mhm.
who's part of the military, group. This is his book that
Yeah,
we had to buy. I mean,
I,
I
I
don't.
I I like Paul. I think he's a little rigid in his approach,
Oh yes,
and I also think that to some degree he's kind of keeping military secrets, so he doesn't want to let people know just how useful the remote viewing
exactly.
technique is.
I
Like
agree.
he doesn't want you to know that you can go back to the crucifixion of Yeshua, for instance. He doesn't want to know you can go look at Buddha under the Bodhi tree, and see
Absolutely.
what
Yeah.
he doesn't want. He just wants to use it for mundane things here and now, and go, okay, well, if you go look in, what your mom is doing right now or what your friend is doing right now, can you perceive it? So he's
Yeah. Well, that's true about his personality. And he actually signed this for me because we were supposed to have this book for our class. And I'm like, hey, Paul, where's my book? And he's like, oh, crap, sorry, and he signed it, which was really cool. But he is very rigid. And this book, I mean, it goes heavy into military stuff and actual experiences of remote viewing with sketches and whatnot. But I just want to show you one more book, The Seventh Sense, which is Lynn
Buchanan.
Buchanan, right?
Mhm.
He is very to the point. He's a tough guy. He is very to the point. This is a really good book. There's great exercises in the back. I recommend this book. I've read it several times. Very good.
Yeah, like
Um,
Lynn.
so back in 2020, I took these courses, and there was a Facebook group back when I was on Facebook and remote viewing, and I did really well. And like I mentioned to you, I think in a private message, I hung out with some of these, higher ups in the remote viewing world. We just hung out on, Zoom from like midnight to 4 in the morning, just talking, chewing the fat, and it was awesome. But during these groups, and I did really well with the targets and whatnot, to the point where it's like, ooh, that's creepy. How did I get all that information nailed? It just, not
It's
that I
tr-
don't
it,
have.
it's trainable. I mean, that's the point. Is this
Yeah.
extra sensory perception is trainable?
Yeah, but it's a little unsettling. Same thing with mediumship. When you connect with a spirit person and you get a detail that you would never know,
Right.
it's like, well, what kind of magic is that?
Right.
But it got to the point where I'm watching everybody's interactions and stuff in the group, and then all of a sudden I felt something. I'm like, well, what is that? And so I had to look within, and I felt like I was being remote viewed. I would put money on it that I was being. So I put up a black wall around me, because sometimes I do that when I feel or know that I'm getting viewed, remote
Mhm.
viewed.
Now, this is while you were in the middle of a Zoom session, for instance.
No, not the Zoom sessions.
Okay.
In the Facebook groups for remote viewings,
Okay.
one of Paul's groups, where he would do
Okay.
practice targets and stuff.
Sure.
And when I was doing really, really well, it got to a point where, like I felt like invaded. I'm like, what does that feel like? I have not felt that before. So I looked deeper in. I'm like, ooh, I'm not liking this. So I just put it up this black wall, not only on the sides, but on the top and on the, I was fully encased. And I'm like, why am I doing this? I shouldn't have to do it. So I didn't like the feeling. I left the group and bless them all on the journey. And that was the end of the military remote viewing, career for myself. And then I just, took it to the, the spiritual aspect of it because of that, yucky feeling that I got where, I mean, and you can certainly do it. For example, I constantly test my boundaries, my, step out of my comfort zone. And one of my friends, I said, hey, I'm going to try something within the next 30 minutes. And she's like, well, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm not going to tell you, but with the next 30 minutes, just know that I'm connecting with you in some way. So what I did was, I'm not even sure how I did it or what it was, but I connected with her and I actually was able to be in her house and watch her walk around her house. And I'm like, okay, that's probably my imagination because I've been in her house before. So after 30 minutes, I said to her, let me run this by you. And about 30 minutes ago, were you in your laundry room and you were standing on the right side of your room? Did you drop the laundry detergent and go to pick it up? Then your dog came in and started licking up the soap. And she's like, yeah, you creep. How do you know that? I'm like, never mind. But it was just a way to test these boundaries. We all could do this. This is no special woo-woo, by the way. And I would love for you to mention how some of us can start some of this, because you're an instructor as well, remote reviewing instructor, correct? You have students? Right. Yeah. How, if somebody is starting out with basic remote viewing or CRV controlled, can you just walk us through the process a little bit, so our, the people watching can kind of understand it?
So the best way, in my view, again, because most of the traditional, if we go back to Rosicrucians or New Age development and all that stuff, most of the psychic development is fairly abstract. People sitting around with their eyes closed, using crystals, using tarot cards, other things to prompt their intuition, and all of those things have their value. But if somebody wants to use remote viewing as a precise tool to get very specific about perceiving specific things, honestly, the best thing to do is to start to actually sit down with a competent instructor. I'll be honest with you, preferably in person. I know it can be done over camera, mm-hmm. But it's way better to do it in person so the instructor can actually watch you. But it's better to have like a boot camp almost. For instance, with the times that when I've done them when they're very successful is I'll start on a Friday night and end on a Sunday. And the person spends the entire weekend doing remote viewing. That's all we do. Ooh. And what that does is that it's a little bit shocking to the nervous system, but it helps the person actually acquire, kind of install the protocol, so to speak. So they go through it automatically, because that's the important part is you need to be able to kind of move through the protocols, the stages automatically without much thought, because that allows, your that 50% of your consciousness is caught up with those protocols. The other 50% is at the target site. And that's what allows that psychic part of yourself to go acquire that data and bring it back is that structure. And so doing it over a weekend winds up being very good because the people are immersed in it. They get the Friday night, they go home, they have typically very vivid, wild dreams because they're opening up that yes. unconscious psychic part of themselves. They come back and they spend that time. And people have different learning curves. Some people come in and they will usually do at least 10 targets through the weekend. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're a trainer and you know how to cue them up properly in a way that's going to, for their level of expertise or lack of expertise as the case may be, and it's going to be novel enough to help them on a growth curve, they're able to see the potential of the entire process. Some people experience phenomenal success at first, which is called kind of the first timer experience, right?
That happens. Yes, that's a thing. It's a thing.
And then they go into shock a little bit. And they go, holy shit, yeah. This works, Yeah. And then sometimes, depending on how studious they are, sometimes they'll fall off and they'll become inaccurate for a few targets, and then they'll pick it back up. Yeah. Some people start, and it's the protocols are it's so different from closing your eyes and meditating. You got to keep your eyes open, at least technical. Now,
oh yes, yeah.
What I use technical remote viewing, which is a little bit of a variant on controlled remote viewing, but very similar. Got to keep your eyes open and document the data. and there's not much thought. You're kind of trying to automate the process and learn it very quickly to acquire the information. And so sometimes people will start and they'll just fail and fail and fail and fail. And
Yeah.
I still remember this woman from Britain who did one of my classes, and she failed like the first 5 targets, and everybody else was getting information, and she's like, I'm going to ask for my money back. Like, this is like, I'm not learning
And
it.
usually women do better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Now, for whatever reason, she was having a little bit of trouble here.
Oh.
Now, look, I believe this. Your unconscious mind, that psychic part of yourself, whatever that is, however we want to define it, it knows the information.
Oh,
it knows what's in that envelope. If I hold the envelope up, it's a picture, it's a written cue, bam, it knows instantly. The problem with acquiring psychic information is getting our conscious processing and our own hangups and our own analytical mind and our creative imagination out of the way so that we can just get that raw info. And that's people, it's a very surprisingly passive process. That's why you're trying to tie up your analytical mind with the protocols, right? So, I guess she thought it was going to unnerve me, or some people in class were like, oh my God, she's going to ask for her money back. She can't. And I'm like, just chill. Like, we're going to get through this. Keep following instructions. You're taking your unconscious mind and your conscious awareness, and you're putting these two together in a way that you never have developed before. No one has ever taught you how to do this. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Like, just keep going. And of course, within a target or two, bam, she nails it. And she's nailing it, and she's nailing it, target after target. And of course, then she's in tears, right? She's like, oh my God, this works. By the end of usually Saturday evening or Sunday, everybody's like, they're looking at their work and they're looking at everybody else's work, and they're looking at the descriptor words they're using, the sketches. They're going, oh my God, we actually went to the same place and got the same information.
I love when that happens.
Oh yeah. And I'll do like, okay, let's do something there's no way I could know, right? Like, if you guys think I'm suggesting something, we'll go to this person's mother's best friend right now. What's that person doing? And we'll view that. And we'll try, then we'll try to validate it, and usually, thankfully, we've been able to validate it usually within about a half an hour and go, yep, that person that mother's best friend was involved in that activity right then.
You have to have that validation. Yep.
Yeah.
I do want to share something, and I have
the only other point I would say about remote viewing is learning how to meditate properly always helps, but it's not necessary. Yeah, it's not necessary. You could actually learn remote viewing, never learning meditation.
I'm not a big meditator.
Yeah.
I mean, I will usually at a certain time of day, I take time out to connect with the spirit world. So no matter where I am, I'll just stop and connect with them. Sometimes I'll meditate.
I would call that a light meditation of some kind. Whenever you're turning your attention inward like that.
Absolutely. So I'll do that. I'll do a bunch of mini meditations. But then there's another one that's like a little off topic, sitting in the power, where I would do like what is kind of like a meditation, but instead of going inward, I go outward to the spirit world, and it's connecting with the spirit world.
Okay. It's
like a meditation with the spirit world. I do want to say something about a remote viewing session, that one of my favorite ones. I mean, I have like a handful, but this one was super cool. Let me just get my notes here. All right. So,
hi, everyone, by the way.
Yes. Hi. You know what? I can't. Are we getting? Can you see comments at all? I don't know. Let me just check.
I cannot. I apologize. Not on the phone.
Oh, let me just. And I apologize, guys, if we are missing any comments, because I just see Joanne
they might be asking all kinds of questions. We're just rolling right over them.
We're rolling, and I apologize for that, because sometimes comments are a little wonky here. All right. So what happens in the classes I took in a controlled remote viewing class, Paul, or whoever your teacher was, Paul in my case, would give you a series of numbers, right, which was the target. And this one was 200-707649. Okay.
Now see, this is where we get into the abstract part where people go, okay, because and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when those first started, what they were is they were actual physical coordinates.
Yes.
Is what they were when they first started out. And so they would send a viewer to this particular building in the Soviet Union and go, what's in that building, right? Like, and then they discovered that that wasn't necessary. They could just assign 8 random target reference numbers, and that series of numbers became the handle
Yes.
for conscious awareness, even though it pointed to where they wanted to go. And that's like abstract. Like, how the hell does your unconscious know?
How does that happen? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. So this was back in 2020. And it's a series of numbers. It could be 2 numbers. It could be 1. It could be whatever. But it's that blind target that we were given. And what I usually do, and I when I did these targets, I didn't really spend. It's the same thing with my mediumship. It's between 10 and 20 minutes. That's it. All the information comes in at that time. Anything after that is fluff. So I know it's different for everybody, but I'm saying that that's just, the way I do things. So when I was doing the remote viewing sessions, I would put on noise canceling headphones because, of all the stuff.
Can be
around.
very good. Very good.
Yes. And so then, and I do something similar when I want to really dig deep into mediumship. I'll put a blindfold on because I am so clairvoyant that I need to just shut that down, so other stuff can come in.
I have a very hard time meditating without a sleeping mask on. I'm so sensitive to light. Yeah.
Yeah, a blindfold is a must. Okay, so what happens, guys, if you want to, interested in doing these controlled remote viewings, you get a little number, and you can do this with your friends. A lot of times, people open up a book or magazine or whatnot, and they will focus on, I don't know, a page in a Southern Living magazine, and it's a cup of coffee or whatever. So we get a little number, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the target is this cup of coffee. And then you sit there and, usually you'll start to see like images. I think the way that they do it is you see, like these little lines and whatnot, but I just go right in. I don't mess around with all those things that I was taught. I just go right in, and I'll see like squiggles and lines. And a lot of times for this example I'm showing you, it started off with something round and something squiggly and something vertical. That's a good start. So once I see those visuals, you write it down, but then the rest of the session is all about senses. What do I see? What do I feel? And I'll write down, what do I see? And I'll write stuff down. I'll say, or feel or hear, whatever. And it'll be one word like shiny, sharp, hard, cold.
Right. The raw sensory details. Mm-hmm.
Right. And then, for my thing, I'll also bring in color. What color? Yellow, blue, green. And this is where it's kind of, because no matter what you see, there's going to be blue because it's going to be a sky. You're going to see these colors in every single target. So I try not to do colors too much unless they're very specific colors. And then what do I feel? And then it's not only like you can't have tunnel vision in these experiences. What's under my feet? What does it feel like under my feet? Is it hard, soft? Is it squishy? Is it wet in case it's water? Is it crunchy like sand or gravel? So your footing is very important. So the focus goes down to your feet. What's under my feet? What's behind me? So in my meditative mind, I am literally doing this, and I'll do that with my headset on. I literally look all around me, and I write everything down. Words, big space, blue, open, exciting, sounds, airy, breezy, dots, speckles, tall, vertical, open space, rough, and all these very descriptive words, black, shiny. And then towards the end, I would write more sentences like hard to get, expensive, wish I was there, underground is super important, whatever it is. And this was another, usually like 3 or 4 pages. The same thing with my mediumship readings. I write everything down, and it's usually about 3 or 4 pages. And this was one. And these are the things that I was experiencing. The waves and this round thing and people and some kind of building and some space. And it's very important to write end at the bottom so you can end that session. The same thing with mediumship. Unless I say, okay, end, we're clapping, we're done. They're going to keep bugging me. So
you need to cue up the psychic part of yourself to say, okay, we're done now. This is over.
Here.
Yeah.
Everybody
disconnect. Yeah.
All right. So this was with all those descriptive words, and this was kind of, what I was feeling with a little tree here and whatnot. And the actual target, and it's a crappy picture, but it was the spheres in Amazon Fair in Seattle, Washington. I did a picture of it, is this guy right here.
Right.
So I picked up on that, and there was, you can't see him, but there's pine trees here, and there's people and shiny things. And, it's just, a fairly good, session.
Yeah.
So that's, guys, like I said, if you're wondering what controlled remote viewing is, blind target, blind session, that's kind of what it is. Now, one other thing in remote viewing, I want to talk about outbounding. And this, I had learned in my class as well, where the teacher said, okay, on Tuesday at 2:30, where am I? I'm like, ooh, this is fun. And this was, a couple days from, so I had to make a note, okay, Tuesday at 2:30, I have to sit and do this process all over again. And who does that? It was the first time I did it, but you have to drop the fear and just have fun with it and just relax.
Yeah.
And no matter what, and that's key, right?
Oh yeah. And can I make a point about that real quick? That's some of the now I am a natural psychic, and I knew this worked, so I muscled my way through really bad instruction when I first tried to learn remote viewing. But the part about it is you have to be, and sometimes natural psychics are the ones who are the hardest to train with the remote viewing protocols, because there's performance anxiety, so they get all caught up. I'm trying something completely new.
Yeah.
This is unfamiliar, and they're so worried about their reputation that they get all caught up. And the moment you pop into fear, here's the end of the scale that is fear, and here's intuition, where you're actually pulling in the raw sensory data. You're all the way over here. You're not. I mean, you're not going to pick up anything useful whatsoever. Yeah. You have to be willing to actually let go, forget about the results, forget about the outcome. And if so, either with the Rosicrucians, they say experiment. With the remote viewers, what their technique is, just forget about the outcome and follow the protocols, and just do it, and have fun with it. Let go, just let go, and that's
let go. Surrender.
People don't realize. Yeah, that's the passive process I was talking about, where people don't realize the value of. They think that it's this. I want to go perceive this particular information, or I want to see this picture. Everything has to be let go of. The outcome, whether you're going to be accurate, whether your reputation's on the line, whether everything. You have to let go of everything, and once you do that, bam, that's normally when the best, most accurate data is acquired.
Yep. And the same thing is with mediumship. It's when the ego is there, when you're like, oh, I have to get this right. It's not going to turn out well at all. But as soon as you release the fear and surrender, and just say, and with remote viewing, and just let it flow. Whatever you pick up, and in mediumship, it's better to say something and be wrong than to not say something and be right.
Yeah. Can I make one point? Yes. And again, this is about remote viewing. But for instance, my daughter, when she was very young, I taught her remote viewing, and it was funny, the contrast, because I would go into adult classes and I'd start teaching people, and I'd say, your unconscious mind knows this. It knows what's in this envelope. And I'd go over it, and the people are fighting me, and they're going, I don't understand. Like, why would that work? How does this work? What do the 8 random numbers mean? Like, I don't get any of this. And they'd sit there and fight me, and I'd have to sit there and go, look, just let go, stop fighting, follow my instructions, put the pen to paper, don't think about it, just go. It's like playing a piano, just go. And it would be this amazing. Half the time was spent fighting the students on why they thought it wouldn't work. And the contrast was so interesting with my daughter, because even though she had a lower vocabulary, right? So she had a smaller word descriptor list, for instance, that she would use to describe the targets. She trusted me as her dad. She's 8 years old. I sit down, I go, okay, sweetie, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. We're going to go through these stages. And when we open up this envelope, you're going to have information about that picture in that envelope. And she's like, okay, daddy. And she just followed she's like, okay. And she's very studious, and she sat there and she went through it and nailed the target every time. There was no resistance whatsoever. Nailed the target every time. I've never been a little bit of a sidetrack here. I've never been very good at dowsing. Did some dowsing tests with putting stuff under different cups and all that stuff. Man, that girl was on fire. She just every time, she totally trusted the process.
Yeah.
And again, it's not it's not that I don't want people to be critical thinkers and to evaluate things. I do. Our analytical mind is very strong. But when you're trying to perceive, when you're getting in that mode, whether it's either mediumship or meditation or remote viewing, there has to be that process of surrendering passively and just perceiving what you're getting.
Absolutely.
Just let go. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was talking about outbounding, which is another aspect of remote viewing, and that is projecting into the future. Well, not really. It's when you're, like I said, in this one class I took where Paul had said, okay, Tuesday at 2:30, sit down and we're going to have a session, find out where I am. What am I doing? What do you, what do you pick up? So it was like, okay, great. So on that day, it was at 2:30 and the headset went on. I had my little clipboard. I'm like, well, this is fun. So, I've never done this before. And anything that I picked up, I wrote on paper, and it was this mess right here, this mess, all kinds of pictures, having fun with it, just letting it go. No color, and just words like, hard, blue, air, clouds, vertical, green, round, lemony, red rectangle box, tunnel, sharp, and it goes on and on. Landscape, lots of activity. Music, question mark, because I wasn't sure. And tunnel, and I just drew some stuff. And then I zeroed in on Paul himself, and I saw what clothes he was wearing. I'm like, you have a beige top on. No, I'm sorry, a blue top and gray pants. I just wrote that down. I'm like, I'm just going to go for it. And this is a little picture of him and what he was wearing. And so happens that he was at a park. And so here's the trees, here's the tunnels, here's happy, here's music, there's people. And did I say park? No. You're not supposed to say, well, I think Paul's at a park. You just describe it in detail. You don't name it,
Right. You're not right. With any type of remote viewing experience, the idea is, and this is the interesting part, because our conscious mind wants closure, right? Like it wants to know, okay, what is that? It wants to identify, is this an opportunity? Is it a threat? Is it, what's going on here? So it wants to put a noun to whatever's going on.
Yes.
And the remote viewing process, and I would say in indirectly the meditative process as well, or any type of, it's open-ended. You're trying to keep that psychic aperture open as long as possible, receiving information without jumping to a conclusion. So somebody could be, they could be remote viewing something and you come to a conclusion, you jump to a conclusion really quick because you get a couple sensory descriptors and you're totally wrong.
Yes.
Like that's normally when people wind up being wrong. You want to keep that process open as long as possible. And at least with remote viewing, and this has held true for me, the maximum length most people seem to be able to hold open that psychic aperture and be receptive is about 45 minutes. There seems to be some type of physical, almost, I personally think it's like doing higher calculus. It really drains at least for me, really drains me.
45 minutes.
I can't. Yeah, 45 minutes is a long,
it's a long time.
It's a long session. And at that point, I can tell, man, I'm spent, like everything's gone.
Yes.
But it seems to be about the length of time at one time. So when you're trying, let's say you got a big project, you have to break it up between multiple sessions because you're not, and that's the other thing is people want to sit there and go, well, I want to understand all the mysteries of the universe. I want to understand the alien agenda, are the aliens here? What's going on? For instance, all this stuff, in the news right now. And what we have to realize is we human beings are really limited. We have to break things up. It's way better to break all these things up into small questions, small topics that we will then go in and take a look at, and then we can put together the big picture. But people want to jump to that right away and go, well, I want to know all the answers. So, or they'll look at a let's say a hoaxed UFO picture in the blind. They'll look at one picture and they'll go, I see, it's all crap. Like it's a hoax, right? All the data comes back. It's a hoax. And they'll go, see, it's all crap. But then you need to go take a look at some other photos and use those as target reference material. And you're going to find out, I'm telling you from experience, some of those are genuine craft. Some of those are different objects. Some of the, so we tend to want all the answers at once. And I think, again, kind of going it's way too big. The universe is a very big, mysterious place, and we can learn a ton, but we have to take it slowly in stages and not necessarily in that way jump to conclusions. For instance, I was convinced. I was so turned off by mediums when I first learned, which is funny because I am a natural medium as well. But I was so turned off with mediums when I first learned remote viewing, and then I remote viewed Sylvia Brown. Now, Sylvia Brown may have been a very, very good medium in the beginning. I think she let everything get way out of hand, and it all
Yeah.
became a performance toward the end. But I remote viewed her in the blind, and I was like, "Oh my God! See, all the mediums are all fake. All of it's fake." Because I just got so much negative, nasty information pertaining to her with the performance and the money and all that other stuff. And that's not true. I went and remote viewed some other psychics, Alison Dubois, for instance, stuff like that. Genuine medium, man. I mean, I'm getting information about the spirit world and spirits coming through and communicating with her, all this back and forth and all this stuff. Genuine psychic
Yeah.
medium. And never got swept away with the fame and the performance part of it. So it's just I think we just need to remain open and realize if we learn mediumship, if we learn remote viewing or any of these tools, we're going to get the answers slowly, and we're going to have to, at least in my view, well, not to go too far off on this topic, with the UAP topic in particular, the answers are not always going to be comfortable. So
Yeah.
it's the same way with mediumship. When you go, sometimes I'm sure you probably tap in, and it's not necessarily all love and light on the other side. Sometimes the
Yeah.
answers are very difficult to deal with. So
And to wind up on that point, because I think we're over time, and it is difficult. It's a big topic. There's a lot to learn, and I will say this about remote viewing: if you're taking classes, to do it with a friend, or because if you're taking a class and you don't know the instructor, to put your subconscious into a location that you don't know what or where it is, for me, it's a little unsettling. That's another reason I stopped it.
I'd say you have to trust it, because somebody could, and that's the thing people realize when they're going through instruction. Let's say, for instance, if you, I mean, and again, I would like to say this is not the case, but human beings are fallible, right? I mean, and some of them have different agendas. So somebody could, as an instructor, let's say they were trying to teach you remote viewing, they could give you one target in the blind and somehow swap that out and say, "Oh no, this is what we're looking at," and literally trash your confidence in the entire process and make you think you're a worse remote viewer. For instance, if they really wanted to manipulate you that way, they could find a way.
Right.
So you do need to go with somebody you consider to be an ethical instructor who's transparent with what they're doing, in my view. But again, that's life. We need to go with people we trust. So
yeah, and the same. I mean, even with mediumship, the outcome is not always. It's not always unicorns and lollipops. And people think, "Oh, I'm going to go to medium and I'm going to get an amazing reading." Yes, you're going to get healing on some level, but the spirit person, is connecting with you or to you for a reason. And this one, it was in a class that I took, where I connected with somebody's mom, and I saw beautiful images of Christmas and presents and fun stuff. And I'm like, oh, she's talking about the presents. I clearly saw presents, and I could go into detail what was in the boxes and the feeling of love.
wow.
And the sitter was like, okay, you are 100% wrong, because she was a crappy mom and a very abusive one at that. So I'm sitting there like, oh, shit, but I'm like, no, you have to, even with remote viewing, you have to trust what you're getting. And I'm like, no, I said, I'm going to stand with this, Christmas scene. She's like, no, we never celebrated Christmas. My mom was a witch. I'm like, okay, hold on one second. So then I pulled back, spoke to her mom's spirit person. I'm like, what's going on here? Am I getting wrong information? Is it something I'm doing as a medium that I'm not connecting correctly? I'm like, no, I trust myself. Like, within the first 10 minutes, that is the message of the session. And then I hear from her, she's like, well, this is what I wished for.
Right.
This is what I wanted.
That's exactly what I was thinking when you were going into that. This is what you wish you had. Regret. Right. So, and again, with that, as far as a personal experience, or whether it's mediumship or whether it's remote viewing, because we don't have, we don't have the Jedi Order, we don't have Jedi Academy, here per se. So, and we're not like the ancient Greece, the mystery schools, or ancient Egypt, or even in ancient Rome, they had mystery schools where you're taught how to connect this unconscious process where we're receiving all this information and our conscious awareness. And until you get experience doing that, it's really difficult to know what it's like when you say, well, I'm perceiving this, and I'm like, well, how do I, like, it all seems wispy and unreal, and they're like,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't get it. Trying to convey how convinced we are, how much we understand, and how we know we're on target or we're getting accurate information, um, is it's hard to convey. I'll give you an example, and I try not to get into this too much because of the medical aspect. But I had a client who called me, and she had cancer um, at one point, and my ex-wife had cancer. I perceived that even before. Maybe I'll have to get into something about that later. But 6 years before she got it, so I'm really good for whatever reason at picking up cancer. And the client had cancer, and she was terrified that she had cancer, and she called me up and she was concerned, and she says, I'm going in for a test. I've got this stuff going on. And again, go to your doctor, guys. I'm not suggesting not going to doctors. So they treat pathology. I'm not totally sold on modern medicine, but go to your doctor. So she calls me and she says, I'm concerned about this. Do I have cancer? And I scan her, from my distance. And I'm like, I'm not using remote viewing, just spontaneous, like clairvoyance and projecting my consciousness. And I'm going, I'm not sensing any cancer. And I'm like really good at sensing cancer. But I'm not getting that. And she says, okay, she hangs up. She calls me back a week later and she says, my test came back positive for cancer. She's like, how could you mislead me? How could you betray me? And I'm sitting there and I'm scanning her again and again. I'm sorry, I'm not picking up cancer. I don't know what to tell you. I would go back to the doctor. Like there's some kind of mix up or something. I am not perceived. Either I'm the worst psychic in the world or you don't have cancer. I can't, I'm not sensing it at all. And that's going into, again, that passive inner process that's very difficult for us as a medium or a remote viewer to teach people, to convey to them, like the reality of this, like it's actually real. And sure enough, a couple days later, she calls me back and she says, there was a mix up at the lab.
Oh.
Now that woman was in
Good news for her.
utter torture for days. And I'm not saying that I'm not saying that she should have believed me, right? Mix up at labs happen all the time. Right. It's not about me. I felt bad for her because she got erroneous information because there was a mix up at the lab and she got somebody else's results. She was terrified. And all I could do is tell you what I'm perceiving. I'm sorry.
Ooh. Oh, meanwhile, the person who got mixed up results, he's actually sick and he thinks he's fine.
I know. Oh, it's terrible.
Oh, so, all right. Listen, James, this was, a fantastic topic, and I could branch out for another, hour or two, but we might save that for another time. Thank you so much for enlightening us with, remote viewing and your mediumship experiences and your psychic awareness. And again, I apologize if people are writing comments. It's difficult for us to see them here for some reason. But again, this was super fun. If you do have any more questions about remote viewing, go to James's Epic Mercury on Substack, and I'm sure he'll be glad to answer any of your questions. And I can do that as well, especially the mediumship part. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. James, thank you so much.
I look forward to your next guest, too. Ciao.
Yes. All righty. Bye-bye. Thank you.